Testing, testing. There we go. Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up. Great. Well, good evening. I'm glad you all are here this evening on a Wednesday during our summer. This is like super awkward. Like I feel like I need to kneel in order to like get close enough, but it just feels weird. How does he do it? We are starting a study in Nahum to kind of kick off the summer. How many of you are familiar with Nahum? Anybody? Close friends? Yeah, one, couple of you. Who loves the subject of judgment? Who just loves talking judgment? Okay, so I do. I love talking about judgment, not because I'm gleeful about it, not because I'm glad that people suffer in some ways, but because it means that God is just. Like, if you don't have a just God, you have no comfort in life at all. So I want you to think for a moment what it would be like if you were to live during a time like, or in a city, let's say it's Gotham City or something like that, okay, and there's no justice. Does that make you feel safe and comfortable? This idea that there's no justice in the land, there's no just judge. I'm preaching out of my thin line, and it is when you only have like 2 or 3 chapters in something, sometimes it's hard to find. There you are. I found you. Does anybody know how to man the heat? Does anybody feel warm in here? Is everybody comfortable? Okay, if you're comfortable, we'll just leave it as that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, so justice means that God is going to bring about what is right and make everything right in the end. So if you like have an unjust judge, you would actually have an outcry against that judge. If a judge is just letting people go and they're criminals and they've done horrible things, when we see nations doing terrible things to other nations and to their own people, like we feel at the very center, because we have a very Christian virtue ethic, that we need to step in order for there to be real justice. Because if justice is not done, there's no safety. And I actually need to turn this on. Give me just a second before I go too far. So God is just, and that ought to be a comfort to us who are believers, because for one, we have God's mercy and we have refuge in Christ. And so the justice that we deserve has been poured out on Christ. Like, God is not going to judge us. In fact, it's just for him not to judge us. It's actually the right thing for God to forgive us every single time because we are in Christ. But what about those who are outside of that safety? How about those who are in rebellion against God? Well, they have, as Ephesians describes, the wrath of God abiding on them. So it's kind of like those old cartoon shows where, it's cat and mouse, and the cat's always the cat, the poor cat. He ends up underneath a suspended piano, right? And you know that it's just up to that mouse to just clip that rope, and that thing is falling, and he's going to get probably not what he deserved, because he's just a cat, and cats love mice, and quite frankly, that mouse should die. We don't like mice in our house. We're glad, but we're maybe semi-okay with cats being there. Much better than mice. So we have God's judgment that is hanging over the people, all of us, except that Jesus takes it for those who find refuge in him. And instead of looking at justice as this kind of ugly, disgusting, horrible thing that we ought to shun and avoid, one of the things that I think is very helpful with the minor prophets in particular is that it brings out the justice of God, especially on a large scale. So we don't like to think of like justice in a personal level, right? Like when I think about somebody sinning against me personally, it's like I can let that sin go. But if that person sins against the state or against God himself or has killed somebody, like that problem becomes bigger. It's outside of just my forgiveness. Now it's in the hands of a system and authority that God has put in place. And we say that's good. It's good that people are brought to justice in a society like that. But what if the entire social structure, what if all of the judges, what if all the laws were unjust in and of themselves? And they punished those who do good, and they let people and celebrated and like rewarded people who do evil. What do you do if an entire nation ends up that way? Well, that's a pretty big problem, both in scope and kind of philosophically speaking. It's a really large problem. So what is God's answer to that? What is God's answer to that? I need to go grab something really quick, but I'll just keep talking. So I want you to think of an event that happened at Pearl Harbor many years ago when Japan bombed all of those battleships and how unpredictable that was. And it happens, and we're in shock as a nation, just an absolute shock. What is the right response in that situation? Forgiveness? Who thinks forgiveness? Let it go. Okay, who says like something needs to be done? Okay, so see how that's different when it's in a big scope versus like a personal level? If somebody like murdered even one of my own kids, like God calls me to forgive that person, but they still are handed over to a justice system, right? My forgiveness does not let them go from the consequences. If something really evil and wicked happens from one nation to another nation, God promises, he promises that he is going to give justice. He is the one who's going to send what it really is in his hands, the rod of justice. And that rod can be a lot of different things. We're looking at like Shamgar many weeks ago. God raises up people, he raises up nations in order to execute his justice. Now, does God have to do that? Does he have to raise up a nation? Can you think of examples, for instance, where God may have done it himself in a very personal way? There are two big ones. Sodom and Gomorrah, that's one big one. What's another one? Yeah, Babylon, great. What else? There's a few more. Asher? Okay, Nineveh, yeah, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. Nineveh. What else? This one's kind of bigger than all of them. The flood, right? God brings about a flood. That's a pretty big in scope, right? It really took care of all of the problems. And then he sets up governments, and those governments can either be good or bad. And he uses those governments in his own way to bring about justice, and that's exactly what he's going to do with Nineveh. So go ahead and look in your handout there. We just got some fill in the blanks, some really, really simple stuff. I didn't want to take too much time just with the introduction, because you can get any of this information from a study Bible or a very basic handbook or a commentary or anything like that. So this is not new stuff. It's not stuff that like, wow, you did a lot of digging. I didn't do a lot of digging. I did that on purpose. The digging is really in the metaphors and the colors and the things that he brings out in the text that are just absolutely earth-shattering, figuratively and literally. All right, so the author of the book is the prophet Nahum. Thank you. Okay. All right, we can also say, okay, it's the prophet Nahum. How do we know? Yeah, it tells us, verse 1, the burden against Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum, the Elkoshite. Where is he from? Elkosh. Where is that? Nobody knows. Like, honestly, nobody actually knows. There have been a lot of theories, and theories that kind of come and go, but there's no evidence for most of these theories. Was Elkosh a real place? Probably. The fact that we don't know this place means that he was kind of from like nowhere. Like probably a town of like 5 people that has like not even a 7-Eleven, right? Like You don't even have to blink. It's just there and gone as you're passing through. Very small town, as it turns out, probably. So he's from Elkosh. Yes.
Sure, maybe another name, Elkosh, another name for Capernaum, because the newer name, Capernaum is really Nahum.
Right. Right. So I read through like all of that, and that's a really good theory. But like we don't actually have evidence for it. We just know that that's a possibility, right? But very good. Do you want to come up and teach, Dr. Corey? I think you might know more than I do. Pretty sure. All right. So what does Nahum's name mean? This is not something that comes out in the text, but it means comfort or consolation. Comfort or consolation. Okay, and this is always so providential the way that this works out. So God chooses a man by the name of Nahum. His name means comfort, consolation. Maybe that means something, maybe it doesn't, but actually it really does mean something. Who is this message for, do you think? Who's the recipients of this prophecy? Just take a guess. Throw out some names. Just be bold. Okay, it could be Judah. Great, Brody. Nineveh, yeah, I mean that seems like an obvious one, right? Because it's like a proclamation. It is for Judah, right? Because Judah is the one that is left at this point. It's to the Israelites, and it's interesting to me that this is a proclamation of judgment against one of their enemies, and the intention of this prophecy is to warn what's going to come. But primarily, it's to comfort Israel. Justice is coming. That is meant to be a comfort. It's not meant to be something that we balk at or get afraid of. It's actually comforting to know that God is just and that he doesn't let people just get away with things. Nobody gets away with anything in life. You're like, whenever you see like in the news people, you're like, that person's totally like, they did it and they get free. And you're like, they got free. And you're like, oh no. But the fact is that they didn't. Nobody actually gets away. God's wrath, not only does it abide, but we'll see as we move through the text, it builds. It builds and it builds. It's not like there's one judgment that fits all. There's actually an increase of God's wrath against sin. And when it falls, it's very terrifying. So it means comfort and consolation to those who are listening, which is to Judah. The book was written sometimes between the destruction of Thebes, so you can write that down. Again, you can find this anywhere in any commentary, and the fall of Nineveh. Thebes, of course, has a different name in the text, but we know that that name means Thebes. So it's the destruction of Thebes and the fall of Nineveh. Some writers have centered on an exact date of 645, which very well could be the case. But we just know that it has to be between the two because obviously this is written before Nineveh actually fell because it's predicting its fall. But it's also helpful to know about Thebes because that gives us a reference point because it actually kind of references that at one point. His primary audience was the nation of Judah, so we already talked about that, Judah. Why isn't he writing to like northern Israel? Why isn't he writing to Samaria and the northern part, do you think? Yeah, they're already taken by Assyria. Assyria had already come in and taken them captive, and so they were dispersed at that point. So Judah was all that was left. It's some of the smaller tribes. All right, historical setting. Nahum prophesied against the wicked empire of Assyria. Can you think of somebody else, and this will be in your fill in the blank too, but can you think of somebody else who prophesied against the wicked empire of Assyria? Jonah. Do you remember what his message was? Yeah, stop it. Just stop it. It's like he like gives them a timetable, right? I can't remember the amount of days it is. It's like 66 days or 40 days or something like that. And the city will fall. I mean, it was a really short, very concise. And some people are like, preachers, take a note from Jonah. Just say that four words, whatever it is, just really short, to the point. And look at the outcome of that. What happened after he preached in Nineveh? They repented in sackcloth and ashes. And God showed them mercy, which brings up the second theme of Nahum. We'll get to that. The first is judgment, but also mercy. Judgment and mercy, hand in hand. In fact, if you just do a very quick cursory look here, I'm not going to do too much here with the text. But verse 2, God is jealous and the Lord avenges. The Lord avenges and is furious. The Lord will take vengeance on his adversaries and reserves wrath for his enemies. Then go to verse 7. The Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble, and he knows those who trust in him. Look at verse 13. Behold, on the mountains, the feet of him who brings good tidings, who proclaims peace. O Judah, keep your appointed feast, perform your vows, for the wicked one shall no more pass through you. He is utterly cut off. Do you see how like mercy and judgment are kind of like sandwiched together? And they're oftentimes the formulation or the outline of it, they actually correspond with each other pretty well if you go through it that way. We're not going to cover too much of that because I really want to focus on the pictures he uses. All right, the capital city of Assyria was Nineveh, right? We know this, where Jonah went and preached. So what does this tell you? Like, Jonah goes and preaches to Nineveh, and that was 150 years before, about 150 years before he preaches to Nineveh. And Nineveh repents, and now we're right back in the same boat. Just a generation, maybe generation and a half away from that. Like, you remember those old revivals that used to happen? You know, hundreds of people, thousands of people would accept Christ, and these big movements and church plants and an explosive. Like, it's almost like there's just this kind of like the tide just coming in and out. There's just waves of things that happen. And just within one generation, everything can change. It can completely change. Something that Nineveh, of course, was missing was God's word, true worship and sacrifice. And we see the same pattern with the Israelites too, which they have greater condemnation because they had the law and they had the sacrifices and they had the truth. All right, so we already talked about that. 100 years earlier, God had shown mercy to Nineveh through preaching of the prophet Jonah. So we saw Jonah is involved already. People were saved and then they turned away. Nahum was written to encourage God's people that he would judge their enemies and protect his people. Judgment is an encouragement to God's people. We should not see it as a bad thing. It is an outpouring or an expression or an action of who God is in his very nature. Enemies and people. All right, some major themes, and then we're going to wrap up here. God is both just and merciful. He's both of those things. So how can you be just and be merciful at the same time? Well, Jesus is actually the answer to that question. Apart from Christ, justice and mercy together don't make a lot of sense. Because withholding judgment is exactly what a bad judge does. If you withhold judgment for somebody who deserves it, you're a bad judge. You don't know how to do your job. And yet God does it over and over and over. And he's patient, right? He waits and he waits and he waits and he waits and he waits. I mean, look at where the world is right now, and you just feel like God's gavel is just hanging over the earth. He's just ready to just like pound the thing. Like we deserve it. And yet he waits. So his patience and his kindness is there to lead people to repentance. God withholds his justice. And the only reason he does that is because of Jesus. Jesus is coming, and he's going to take all of the pain and all the death and everything, and he's going to take that judgment. And so everything is really in light of Christ. If it wasn't for Christ, the world could not continue on. He's literally the one who is the expression, the very expression of God's mercy and grace. Not necessarily the same thing. All right, so the coming destruction of Nineveh, that's another theme. That one's pretty obvious. And he talks about that pretty much most of the time. It's the focal point. God's sovereignty over all nations. That's a super important one. Because again, when we look at everything that goes on, like we just cast some votes yesterday, and we feel like we're so empowered, here in America to choose who's going to be in charge and everything. But are we really in charge? I mean, who's really in charge? God's in charge. He's the one who raises people up. He's the one who brings them down. He allows wicked rulers to persist, and he's the one who causes them to fall. Like, it's all God. So when our favorite candidate isn't voted for, isn't in office, what should our reaction be to that? It's hard for us to be like, praise God. But in reality, it's like, may God be glorified, right? God always is glorified in his choices. We don't see the big picture, but God does. He's sovereign over all nations. And God will bring justice against sin and oppression. That is a major theme, especially in the major prophets. Oppression of the Israelites against the poor, against the downtrodden, against the widow, and such. So that's a pretty prevalent theme in God's justice against nations, is their oppression. And Nineveh was, if you know any history about Nineveh, they were significantly terrible, especially Nineveh itself was incredibly awful. It was a horrible, horrible place of oppression. All right, important motifs. God's wrath is often pictured through images of storms, earthquakes, and other forces of nature, and we actually see that pretty often, even throughout the rest of the prophets. Why do you think God uses those pictures concerning himself? Like, why use nature to describe his wrath and his justice and his presence? Yeah, we get it, right? Like, most of us probably who've lived in Iowa for over a week have endured thunderstorms and tornadoes and derechos and things like that. Like, it's like terrifying, and yet it's awe-inspiring at the same time. And that's why we go outside and watch, right? When the sirens are going off, we're like, I wonder what's really going on out there. I want to be a part of the excitement. Yeah, nature actually shows some of the incredible qualities of God's power and his wrath because it's built into it. So, like, and take this for what it's worth. You can completely reject it and throw out the window, and that's fine. This is just kind of my take, and this is kind of a C.S. Lewis take too. Why do lions have claws and fangs? Why is it that there seems to be like these dangerous elements built into the very nature of things in earth before there was any death or anything like that? Why? Well, because Mr. Beaver explains, as the Pevensies are asking him, is he dangerous? Like, yeah, he's dangerous. Of course he's dangerous, but he is good. See, God is power, and he's dangerous in the sense that his power is, you can't control him. You can't tell him what to do. That power and that authority and that ability and then that holiness that God is expresses itself as a reflection in nature of those qualities that he has. And so I think that those were always there from the very beginning, all these dangerous things, because it reflects that God himself is actually not to be reckoned with. The contrast between God's judgment and his salvation for those who trust him, and particularly in the text, we're not talking about salvation in the redemptive Christological sense. We're talking about salvation in the kind of present physical sense, right? God gives refuge to those in this kingdom, not the kingdom here, I'm talking about the kingdom back then. He gives refuge to the people, and that's part of the promises and the covenant promises that he has. And that's actually important to keep in mind too. Right, it actually describes God's character and judgment. So this is this should actually be part of your outline. So verses 1 through 15, character and judgment. 1 through 13, fall of Nineveh. Of course, it's kind of peppered throughout too, so this isn't like cut and paste. And then we have the explanation of why Nineveh deserves that judgment. And if you're wondering where this outline came from, it's from the Bible Knowledge Commentary. I was just copying them because I actually have a note about that, I think, at the bottom. All right, so here's the big idea. This is what I want us to walk away with today. God's mercy is the only means of refuge from his most certain and terrible judgment. God's mercy is the only means of refuge from God's most certain and terrible judgment. When we see judgment falling on something else, that ought to terrify us. Like when the nuclear bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that power and that kind of just absolute, just end all expression of raw, uncontrolled energy. It scared the world. It scared the entire world. Nobody wanted to do that again. What's really cool about America, by the way, is that we were the only ones at the time who had nukes. And we could have ruled the world. We literally could have ruled the world at that point. We could have told everybody, guess what? We have the biggest club. So why don't you all just become Americans? So the very thing that Germany was trying to accomplish at that point and didn't, America is like, we're not going to do that. What kept America from doing that? Yeah, I mean, God sovereignly, right, providentially, but I really think that the Christian virtue ethic that undergirds all, we're not all about just taking things and just building an empire. That's not what America is about. It's a good thing to keep in mind. All right, so lots of little gleaning things that we can take away from the introduction, but Pastor Dan is going to be teaching the next one, and then, we'll kind of flip-flop throughout the summer, the book of Nahum. I'm excited about it, especially just the poetry in it. Oh, some of these things. I mean, just listen to verse 4. I need to stop, but I have to. He rebukes the sea and makes it dry and dries up all the rivers. Bashan and Carmel wither, and the flower of Lebanon wilts. The mountains quake before him, the hills melt, and the earth heaves at his presence. Yes, the world and all who dwell in it. There is this picture that shows up throughout the Bible of when God comes down from heaven, when he starts to press into our finite existence. It's like the earth bends under his weight, and the entire sky can't hold him. And so this picture of him entering in is it's devastatingly powerful. He comes down like the earth heaving. Have you ever seen videos of earthquakes from the fault and how they look? The earth looks like waves of the sea. It's like when God comes down, it's like the earth is just can't contain him. It cannot hold his presence. And the mountains and the hills, they melt before his presence. It's just, oh man, God's powerful. Any prayer requests for this evening? Pray for Shirley Johnson's health, especially tonight. Asher, you have a prayer request? What's that? Yeah, pray for my mother-in-law, Irene. She's just not doing well. So we're just trying to spend as much time as we can. We're making frequent visits to her. We don't know. The Lord knows, but we don't know when the day or hour is. So just be praying for her. Her name is Irene. I don't know if I said that already. Any other prayer requests? Yeah, pray for April, wherever she is, in the middle of the ocean, in space. Everything's in space, by the way. I don't know if you knew this, but literally everything is in space, including the earth. She's in space somewhere. So pray for her. Actually, more particularly, she just wants to know how the Lord is directing her life. She just wants to know what to do. She's like, I want to do everything. And I'm like, I get it. Me too. But you can't. We just can't do everything, do the one thing and do well at it. And she is already doing things. And so we're really glad for her. Pray for Chloe as she's in Italy. So just for her protection and that she will joyfully engage with her peers and just have a good time. What's that? She is having fun? Oh, good. How could you not have fun in Italy? They're going to the Colosseum and like they're all over the place. Like it's really cool. Asher, you had another. Oh, I stole it from you. Yeah, thievery. Lots of health issues in the church. I think we're aware of most of them. Continue to pray for Tim and Diane, Clement. Um, David, you have a two things happening on Friday, right? And so pray for David that everything is successful and they know exactly what they're doing and they find everything they need to find and fix everything that they can fix. And we just trust the Lord in that. Terry. Okay, so Libby is heading to Germany for some appointments for her health. Not Germany. I was like, Germany, that seems weird. Oh, North Carolina. Okay. Sorry, I misheard. I was like, wow, that's wild. I think we have pretty good healthcare here, but maybe it's better in Germany. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. For your leg. Yeah. So hopefully they can get you in for that and they can find out what's going on with your leg. Um, okay, sounds good. We'll be available. Yeah. Oh. Mhm. When did that happen? I feel like I keep on hearing stories like that. Like it's horrible. Just and merciful, that is our God. All right, let's split up into groups of. Oh yeah, one more, Dr. Coburn.
I'd appreciate your prayers for meetings I have started next Sunday at the center. They have an adult Bible school, just for the children, but
Great.
obviously they asked me to do my series. I don't know.
Oh, phenomenal.
Discoveries. I'm
Yeah,
excited to share.
that's exciting. So pray for safety and for just a great presentation for engagement there. Um, I was going to say something. What was it? Oh, be praying for a back to school bash. We just met with Love INC Inc. Doesn't mean incorporated, apparently means in the name of Christ. So, I didn't know what it was, but we met with the gal who's kind of the director there, and she was explaining that that organization to us, and it sounds like just amazing organization connecting churches. Like they really want to connect people to churches directly instead of getting them stuck in just government help. And instead of focusing on like the chronically homeless, the people who just don't want to make changes, they're focusing on people who um, they're kind of in a bad spot. If they had a little bit of help, they would go pretty far. But they want to connect those people to churches. But they also want to be like the vetting system for people who come to a church and be like, we can actually check in, we can make the phone calls and find out if this is a legitimate need, and then be able to go from there. They have some financial help that they do. Another thing they do is they connect churches of like-mindedness together to have kind of big outreaches. So like, during VBS and everything during the summer, love, whatever the radio station, K-Love or whatever, like all these different local stations will promote these. And she's like, it would be really awesome if everybody could just do it all on the same day. And they can just say the churches in the area want to do outreach and they want to serve people. Here are the churches in your area who are doing VBS. And instead of just like VBS hopping and just kind of taking advantage of the little things that they can take advantage of, they want to focus on actually connecting people locally to the church to stay within their areas. And I think that's a really worthy goal. I think that's really, really great. So be praying for Back to School Bash as it comes up. I just got today, I'm so excited, a foam gun. It doesn't shoot foam darts, it shoots foam. So it's like non-toxic foam, and we're going to fill up a 10 by like 8 size swimming pool that we had purchased last year with foam instead of water, so that people won't get chilly, and if it happens to be chilly, because that's been a problem in years past. It's on the calendar, so be praying for that. Be praying for those who come, that we make good connections. We really want to pray for the youth group right now. Right now, it consists of my kids, Laura, who's actually graduated, but we love having her there. We don't want her to leave. So please don't leave. You have to grow up sometime, so it's up to you. And who else comes? I think, and Mariah. So that's our youth group right now. We would love to be able to rebuild that. And we were thinking about outreaches that we can do, meeting in the park. Not that it was accepted, but I was like, we could like reach out on the bridge, and then we could be called the Bridge Youth Group. That would be cool. They didn't think that was cool, so it's probably going to be vetoed. But just pray for our youth group. Pray that we can get some more kids in there and that we can build that program. Same thing with the kids program, which is solid because we're having so many babies in our church. So I don't have too much of a fear for that. Yeah, let's split up and pray together for all of these needs.